Opinions are like assholes. Everybody has one.
I don't think I've ever seen anything quite like this before.
You know, Wobbles, I'm kind of mad at you.
And as a reasonable man, I'm willing to do whatever's necessary to find a peaceful solution to these problems.
Welcome to another episode of the Punching Up Movie Podcast, where two long-standing friends take a movie that's either a movie from the canon, a classic, a cult classic, or a beloved piece of entertainment. One of us has an issue with it, maybe both of us have an issue with it, and we just kick it around a little bit. And so today we're actually kind of like almost relevant, because it is the 40th anniversary of Highlander, I suppose the sword and sorcery 80s cult classic starring Christophe Lambert and Sean Connery. So you've nominated this one, Damian. Can you just give us a brief synopsis of Highlander, please?
Brief.
So this film called Highlander came out in 1986. The plot centers on Connor MacLeod, played by Christophe Lambert, who's a 16th century Scottish warrior who discovers he's immortal. How he's immortal, I don't know. We'll get into that at some point. We'll find out. We'll get all the answers to all these questions later on. But he finds out he's immortal. He gets shunned from his village, goes and marries this woman, lives quite happily until she dies of being old, and he stays young. And then he heads over to New York centuries later, to the 1980s New York, the best type of New York. Well, second best after the 1970s. And then he has got to battle an ancient old foe, an evil barbarian played by the mighty Clancy Brown, the best thing in this film. And in the end, apparently there can be only one. Well, there should have been only one. I wish there was none. Over to you, Adam.
Yeah, I would just like to add to the I'd say the very contemptuous plot synopsis that he's pursued through history by this barbarian. He meets him in the 16th century, and there are other immortals, all of whom are fighting for the prize, which is released. And there's an energy discharge, isn't there? When you can only be killed by the severing of your head in a duel. And then there's some kind of energy discharge that makes you more powerful as an immortal. And obviously the last two to fight get the prize.
Which is?
I've no idea. I've seen the film.
Yeah.
Not quite sure what the prize is.
Yeah. They didn't get a trophy or something like that.
There's a kind of explanation of the prize at the end, but you know, it seems to be a lot of lightning going into your body, and you levitate for a bit, and then you fall down. And loads.
It's the shittest prize ever, mate. Considering
I don't know. It seems to be quite a dangerous prize for anybody standing in the local vicinity, because it always seems to result in every window within a square mile exploding. You know, so the collateral damage of getting the prize is probably, you know, like kind of, you know, sort of bars your conscience a little bit, I guess, if you're a heroic kind of headlopper. So the background to this film is quite interesting, actually. It was originally a UCLA screenwriting students prize, well, not prize, sort of script called Shadow Clan. So it's gone through it was called Shadow Clan. It was called The Dark Knight at one point, interestingly enough. And the original version sounds like something you might have liked, because it was a lot darker.
Yeah.
So there was no prize. Immortals fought each other and sort of accrued trauma as they did it. So, and they could have children as well. So they've got sort of kids littered throughout history. I think the inspiration for it was the duelists. So that the Gregory Wyden, the screenwriter, was a big fan of the duelists, and he was quite fascinated by, you know, because obviously for those who haven't seen the duelists, it's a film about an act of offense that it's perpetuated over decades in this duel between these two people that just keep coming together and fighting and not quite managing to kill each other. And then almost like the reason for the duel's forgotten. And it seems to be about that and the fatigue that sets in perpetuating this like blood feud that lasts a lifetime. He was also inspired by a visit to the Tower of London, where presumably in the White Tower, he saw all of these weapons, all of these suits of armor. And his thought was, well, what happens if one person owned all of that and it was accrued over an also immortal lifespan? Who would that person be? And so that's the basis of quite a dark screenplay. The Conor McLeod character sounds reasonably the same, except he's a little bit more tormented. The main difference, really, in terms of characters, is the villain, who becomes the Kurgan in the movie version, and in this he's tormented. He's evil, but if you kill someone, you feel their pain as you kill them, and he's just gone through life basically, and his only purpose to carry on living is killing. But it torments him, and he's more of an integrated member of society. So rather than sort of riding around New York in leathers, looking really conspicuous with a stitched together Frankenstein neck, like Clancy Brown does, sort of grinning and just massacring people in plain sight, this guy wants to remain hidden. He's a little bit more like a vampire, and I guess he wants to die as much as he wants to kill someone. So it sounds like a lot darker script. It gets bought by EMI. Russell Mulcahy gets hired to direct. And now Russell Mulcahy is a legend in terms of like music, whether you like his stuff or not. He's one of the pioneers of the music video from the 80s, and that's initially why they hired him. And he's responsible for the very first video being shown on MTV, which was Video Killed the Radio Star. And you throw a stone at videos in the 1980s, and he's probably directed it. So he's done loads for Duran Duran, Spandau Ballet, AC/DC, about 1 million videos for Elton John, and things like that. And so he brings that aesthetic to the film, which is basically lots of neon, sparks, sort of smoke, dry ice, all of that sort of stuff, and sort of, I guess, relatively fast cutting and things. In terms of the casting, there's a lot of other ways this could have gone. If you sort of look at some of the alternative Conor McLeods, there's loads of them, and the main choice was Kurt Russell. But Goldie Hawn talked him out of it, which is probably why he stayed with her, because she was a source of good advice. And she talks him out of it. And there's loads of other people, including like Scott Glenn, who's also in contention for the Kurgan as well. So he's considered for both roles. You've got Ramirez, although they settle on Sean Connery, like Gene Hackman was considered, and Peter O'Toole. Arnold Schwarzenegger was considered for the villain, but it was too close to Conan, so you can understand why he didn't want to do it. Too close to Conan and the Terminator. He felt it was like just a bit of both, and so I don't know what he went on and did. He's probably went on and did Commando and Predator instead of that. And so they settle on Christophe Lambert because of Greystoke, the Legend of Tarzan. So he's sort of done this movie. Russell Mulcahy doesn't even see the movie; he just sees a picture of him and goes, "That's the man." Hires him, realizes he doesn't speak English, so he kind of has to learn English, and also has to undergo extensive sword fight training and like sort of voice training to get a Scottish accent, which we can talk about in a little bit. They obviously hire an actual Scot in Sean Connery to play a Spanish Egyptian immortal. And they're aware of this. They're unaware. So they put in a line where someone says to Christophe Lambert, "Where are you from? I can't place your accent." He goes, "Well, I've been lots of places." So that's that little gal. They shoot it in Scotland and New York. The Scottish production is quite entertaining because they have a little bit of a mutiny of extras in the battle scenes, because they don't want to give them breakfast. So there's this like virtual mutiny, and Sean Connery is almost there. They want to get Sean Connery involved because he would side with the extras, and then they relent, but there's still bad blood, and the extras burn an effigy of Margaret Thatcher to the confusion of the crew. So what she got to do with any of this? But they feel there's a lot of drinking despite alcohol being banned on set. So a lot of the battle sequences, people just like really taking chunks out of each other. The sword fights, one of the features of them visually is sparks. And I don't quite know how this works, but this is what the research said. They actually strapped car batteries to the actors' legs, and which apparently created the sparks, but also caused the swords to overheat after a while. So I really don't know how that works, like mechanically. There was an incident, and this is probably the most famous incident in the making of the film, where Clancy Brown, in his nervousness and enthusiasm, nearly put Sean Connery in hospital because in their fight, I suppose about a third of the way through the film. Hang on a moment. Clancy Brown in his fight with Sean Connery is supposed to, and you see this in the film, he's supposed to leap into this room and chop a table in half. But he hit it with the flat of his sword, and the sword explodes, and a shard of metal narrowly misses Sean Connery's head, which causes Connery to storm off the set and nearly exit the movie, but for a lot of groveling from Clancy Brown. Just a few little technical things. The big fight between Sean Connery and Clancy Brown takes place in a castle tower, and as they're clashing their swords because they're immortals and they're exhibiting, they're sort of giving off some like power, I guess. The castle's falling around about their ears. This is all done practically. You might argue it looks like it's all done practically with fishing lines pulling the rocks or the stones away. The film, this surprised me actually. The film doesn't do that well commercially. I just assumed it was a massive hit. It kind of tanks in America, but does really well in Europe. It's very badly marketed, and the posters are appalling in America, and in France. I guess because Christophe Lambert is a bigger star there as well. I'm not sure the timing of this. I'm not sure if Diva's come out, because he does Diva about the same time. No, Subway with
no
yeah,
Subway. Subway was before, I think.
Oh yeah, well in that case that makes sense because it's an enormous hit in Europe and in England, well, part of Europe, but it's in England and Europe. And the final thing I forgot to mention, which is I don't know, argue probably like in many respects in terms of quality, you may disagree with this. The legacy of the film is that Queen get involved. So Queen have just had a massive success doing a very counterintuitive success actually doing the Flash Gordon soundtrack. So they're asked to do this. They're only supposed to contribute one song, and they see a 20-minute reel of the film, and they read the script, which Roger Deakins says is the best script he's ever read, better than Flash Gordon apparently, and they each write a song each. I can't remember who writes what, except Brian May writes who Wants to Live Forever, based on he resonated with it because there was an illness in his family, and he relates that to because it's obviously like the death song, isn't it, of MacLeod when his wife sort of dies of old age, even though she doesn't really look that old, and things like that. So but the film has gone on to become a massive cult success, and I'm assuming it did really, really well on VHS, because even though it didn't make much money in its initial release, it's to my count, it's produced 3 sequels, a television series, and an animated series, and is currently being remade with Henry Cavill, Russell Crowe, and Dave Bautista and Karen Gillan. So that was quite a lot of research. So
that was good, mate. Well done. That's loads. That's very interesting.
No, I enjoyed researching it actually. Yeah,
much more interesting than the film. I'll tell you, I honestly don't remember seeing it back in 1986. I saw it at the cinema. I saw it once. I think I enjoyed it. I think the legacy, as you said, the biggest takeaway is the Queen soundtrack, and Who Wants to Live Forever is the biggest, memorable part of it. I remember the soundtrack being really good, but then when I watched the film again recently, I only remembered Who Wants to Live Forever. I don't think I remember. There was that other song that you talked about.
Like give me the prize and Princes of the Universe
I
are the
don't.
other two. And there might
Princess of
be
the
another
Universe,
one, yeah.
maybe. Yeah, I don't really remember
But
those.
funnily enough, just to interrupt you a second, I don't think
Mm,
the soundtrack features that prominently in the movie as much as you remember it
no.
doing. I mean,
Mm,
you remember the music in Flash Gordon. It's just blasting. It's real. It's real. Whereas this,
yeah.
I think the music is actually kind of it's less prominent than I remembered it being. Sorry, just want yeah, carry on.
No, that's okay.
Yeah.
Did somebody else do the instrumental, the soundtracky bit, apart from the songs, or was
I
it all
think
Queen?
so. I think Queen did a bit of a bit of incidental music. I think they might have done. I don't know. I'm just I might be misremembering, but I think they did a little bit, and there was never an official Queen Highlander soundtrack released. All the songs ended up on I think a Kind of Magic album.
Yeah.
Apparently there is a yeah, Brian May, one of his missions is to sort of get an official Queen soundtrack release, but it hasn't happened in 40 years. So
So Michael Kamen did the orchestral score for it. And I've just seen here that Marillion turned down the chance to record the soundtrack. Apparently, they were offered to do it. It's quite interesting. Yeah, that is interesting because Flash Gordon is such an iconic soundtrack, isn't it? And because it was released, I mean, I had it on cassette back in the 80s and know it so well. And the songs as well as the instrumental stuff was so great, all by Queen. Brilliant. Yeah. The best part of the film, probably. Yes, doesn't feature as heavily and maybe not as recognizable because it wasn't ever released. Yeah. Yeah. I remember enjoying it, I think, as a sort of 15-year-old kid, but I don't remember enjoying it enough to go and see Highlander 2 or see any of the other ones. So obviously not into it that much. And then when I saw it a month ago or so at the cinema for its 40th release, it was a whim, like it was just on. I wasn't like, oh, I must go and see that, and just on. So I thought, let me go. In fact, I missed Poltergeist as well the other night, which I wish I'd seen because I haven't seen that since back then. And I sat and watched it and really just thought it was a bit of shit. To be honest with you, from like start to finish, there wasn't anything that I really. The few little things that I enjoyed were John Polito, who played the detective, is the sort of bald guy. He played Steve Crizzetti in the first two seasons of Homicide: Life on the Street. So he's sort of indelibly marked in my brain as like that character. So it was nice to see
he's
him.
also one of the villains in Miller's
Miller's
Crossing as
Cross.
well. Yeah,
Yeah,
he's
that's
very
it.
very very
Yeah.
very good in Miller's Crossing.
He was a Coen Brothers dude, wasn't he, for a while, I think.
I don't know. I only know him from Miller's Crossing in terms of his Coen Brothers output. But yeah, I mean, they tend to reuse
Um,
the character
a
actor.
young Celia Imrie,
Yes.
screaming for the death of kill him, burn him, for the death of Conor McLean. He's a
And
witch.
looking quite saucy as well, I thought.
Yeah, of course,
Yeah.
mate. Yeah, yeah. Mm. BT Edney, who played Heather McLeod, Connor's wife, who grew old and died, is Sylvia Sim's daughter. So that was quite interesting. That was a tiny little bit of research that I did. I thought she was great. I'd seen her crop up in something on TV recently, and I was like, oh, I know her. What do I know her from? But she was kind of a staple TV and film actress from the 80s and 90s. I think this was the film that kind of blew her up. But yeah, I didn't know that it hadn't done that well. And considering it hadn't done that well, it is incredibly surprising that it's gone on to have such a legacy. Um, yeah,
Can I read you because I wrote it
please.
down because it amused me so much. Can I read you your texts or messages you sent me? Because
Please,
we
please.
originally weren't going to do this as a punching up. We're going to do another film. I won't mention what
Yeah,
film it is, but we're going to
yeah.
do another film that actually appalled me that you'd even considered it, and it
And
wasn't.
also, as a slight clue, begins with H as well.
Yeah, yeah, and it wasn't. I was going to say it wasn't Conan the Barbarian, but it
No,
was
no,
like
no. I'm down with Conan.
yeah, but I just so this was the thing that basically determined that we were going to see this. You just messaged me, and it was I went to see Highlander last night. What a load of shit! It's one of my favorite. And then you elaborated a little bit. You said the sword fights were utter shit. The camera work was balls. The story had so many holes in it that I thought it was a golf course. I hate golf as well. I hadn't seen it for 40 years. Never saw the sequel. There's a reason. Absolute amateur fest. Would you like to elaborate on any of those points?
Well, it's interesting knowing that he was a music video guy. There are certain music video guys over the time, like what was his name, who did Zone of Interest? Wasn't he? No, I'm thinking.
You're right.
Collating him.
No,
He
you're right.
music?
He did adverts and videos. He's done Radiohead videos, and he famously did
That's right.
The sort of seahorses Guinness advert. There's a famous Guinness advert, wasn't there, in the 90s, I think?
Yeah,
There was this
left
wave.
field music. Dun,
Yeah.
dun, 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 dun. What's his name, please?
Jonathan Glazer.
Glazer. Yeah, that's
Glazer,
it. Yeah. And there's also Chris Cunningham, although Chris Cunningham did loads of Aphex Twin videos. I don't know if he did any
Spike
feature films.
Jones, David Fincher.
Spike Jones. Yeah, there's a bunch of them that come
but
out of that.
they're all like sort of I suppose David Fincher was doing stuff in the 80s, wasn't he? But these were guys that came a little bit later, weren't they?
Yes.
And their aesthetics probably a little bit more cinematic.
Yeah.
Whereas to give Russell Mulcahy his due, whether you like it or not, he creates an aesthetic, I think, for basically he kind of more or less he doesn't invent what he invents. I would say he invents how we see music videos now. Whereas you could say they were promotional videos or promotional bits of film, famously like Bob Dylan's sort of Subterranean Homesick Blues with the cards with the words on that are stuck in the middle of documentary films that can be taken out and shown as a promotional kind of proto version of a video. But he more or less invents the video, certainly the MTV style of video production, and that's what he brings to the film. So I think a lot stands on.
Yeah.
I think there's a lot more wrong, even that style greater, there could be other things that are right with the film that are wrong that would wreck it for you. But should we just talk a little bit about his MTV aesthetic? So it's just
just before you do that, just let me elaborate on what I was just saying about.
Oh, sorry, yeah.
No, it's okay. And it will incorporate the MTV aesthetic, which I'll give you. You can say something in a second. I found it just too choppy. It didn't mold very well. Like the original script that you talked about, that sounded fascinating to me. Like that whole idea of weapons, one person over time collecting these weapons, brilliant. But they eschewed all that and basically made a canon type film, which is exploitative, overly commercial. There's not really much focus on the art of the cinema, or the art of editing, or the art of even sword fighting. I thought the sword fighting was shit. Like everything about it I just didn't buy it. I didn't believe it. And then as I'm watching it again, I'm seeing, okay, so why? Okay, no, you're not going to answer that. No problem. And that really pissed me off. And so I just thought, anyway, back to the MTV. I finished my
I kind of never really liked that aesthetic anyway, of like just sort of lights through fans and loads of dry ice and things. So
yeah 80s aesthetic, 80s cheap effects for the sake of, and it's an MTV. It comes back to him, doesn't it? It's an MTV type of aesthetic that I don't like. I didn't enjoy. Maybe I enjoyed when I didn't know any better in my teens, but now I've seen a lot more. I hate it. It has no artistic merit, I don't think.
Yeah, no, I agree up to a point, although we can talk about Razorback in a bit. Because I got slightly different. I'm sort of almost half laying my cards on the table, because I watched it. I hadn't watched it. I watched it on Betamax, weirdly enough. I watched it on Betamax video.
Originally.
Yeah, originally. I didn't.
Yeah, I was going to say, if you said like I watched it on Betamax recently, that would have been impressive.
Well, it was impressive back then, because it was like they were sort of dying out, Betamax, when I watched it, I think in 1986. But I don't think I might have seen it once or twice since then. I don't really remember. I definitely saw Highlander 2, which I didn't like, and I've not really sort of followed it as a franchise. But I was I didn't really like it either. I more or less agreed with everything you say, but I'm going to try and play devil's advocate. But before I do, I'm going to try and stick up for some things and see if you can shoot them down. But the one
Yeah.
thing that I had against it, which you just brought up, even at the time, was I thought for a film where the whole action predicates around sword fighting, the sword fighting is clunky and clumsy, and they really don't know what they're doing. And I don't know why that is. And I'll tell you why, because you got Sean Connery, who, and we can talk about Sean Connery. I want to talk about Sean Connery in a minute. We can talk about Sean Connery, who knows his way around a fight and a sword fight. You know, he's good. He's good at that sort of thing. And it's choreographed by Bob Anderson, who's possibly one of the best sword fight choreographers there's ever been. Can I rattle off some of his credits?
Please do.
He's Dave Prowse's stunt double for the lightsaber duels in all of the first three Star Wars films. I mean, I can just say this. I mean, he did the fight choreography for Lord of the Rings, Pirates of the Caribbean, but
Wow.
he choreographed possibly one of the best sword fights ever put on film, certainly in the 1980s. Princess Bride. So he does that. And Christophe Lambert trains, I think, probably with him. I'm not sure if he's training with him, but he's definitely sort of choreography. I think he does train with it. So he's trained 4 hours a day with Bob Anderson, who's possibly one of the greatest. You've got William Hobbs, who's like the other guy who did all the Musketeers films and things like that. So you've got Bob Anderson, who's possibly one of the greatest sword fight choreographers, who literally like fought with Errol Flynn in Errol Flynn's last movie, and he's got this phenomenal career. Why are the sword fights so bad? I don't understand. Why are they so clunky and clumsy? And just to add to that, I watched earlier this morning. I watched a documentary called Reclaiming the Blade, which I think was made about 10 years ago, and it's just about the death of Western sword play and how movies revived it. And they give about 10 minutes, 10 or 15 minutes to Bob Anderson. And he never once mentions Highlander. He pretty much mentions all of his other greatest hits, including Alla Triste, which is a Viggo Mortensen film that never really got a cinema release over here, which is sort of a Spanish historical. It's a brilliant film. So he mentions that, but he never mentions Highlander. And all the montages, you get, I'd say, a 5-second clip of Christophe Lambert and Sean Connery just doing sword exercises on a mountain, and that's it. So he, by accident or design, Highlander doesn't come up in conversation. So I don't know. I haven't got an answer to this. Why
I reckon that they're so rubbish because of the way it's filmed. There's so much jumping. There's so much. If you think about the fight between Hugh Quashie and Clancy Brown in the alleyway, is that right? There's that one where the guys, the sort of Vietnam vets there with his guns.
It makes no sense.
Another part of the film that makes no sense. But you just don't know what's going on. There's so much like smoke, and then even that swooping shot of the mountain where they're practicing, as you're saying, like that's a kind of iconic shot. But it's just clink, 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 clink. It's not interesting at all. I mean, maybe it's just hard to fight on a mountain, and that's the best example of seeing the sword fight in action, whereas everything else is so choppy that you can't. How are you meant to see any of the choreography? How are you meant to understand what's going on? So I think probably Bob Anderson, his work was destroyed by the filming and the editing. I think the editing really is the biggest problem with this film is the editing, and then the narrative plot holes,
which we can talk about now, because the lore makes absolutely no sense.
No sense.
Yeah. So you've got this scenario where you have people. I like the idea of like there being this race of immortals that meet over time, duel. You cut someone's head off, you take their power. The last person gets all the power. But I think, like you said, it just that people seem to become immortals at different points in history, and that's not really explained, is it? I don't have a problem with that. I just had a problem with like what the power was and why people were okay with each other when they knew that ultimately they had to chop each other's head off. So you have friendships, and you'd imagine that everyone would be an enemy, and you can understand the whole idea of alliances. It's like we'll form an alliance, but ultimately, when it comes down to it, I'm going to cut your head off. But there wasn't that, So you see Connor McLeod with the actor that you just mentioned, and they meet, don't they, in Central Park, and they're quite chipper about it, and they know that they're coming. It's basically they're the last three, and they seem really amicable about the fact that at some point, if they don't get rid of Clancy Brown, they're going to have to fight each other and chop each other's head off. And then when it happens, there's a little bit of a sort of coda with a bit of narration that says, "Oh, I have all the knowledge now to solve all the world's problems," and it feels like an add-on because they hadn't really thought about what the prize was. And it's sort of fascinating that in the original screenplay there was no prize. There was no prize. That still raises the question: why, with all these immortals around, why would you want to kill them all? If they're your people,
there seems like there's no consequence for not fighting. Like, why do they want to fight to get this ultimate prize, which is this add-on of the world's having all the knowledge? But if they're mates, why don't they just go, yeah, do you know what, we're cool, like why do we need to fight each other? We don't need to. Like, who's making us fight? What is this desire that's sort of taken us to? Neither Connor McLeod nor the Hugh Quashie character feel like they have the absolute desire to have this prize. Like, Clancy Brown is just a cipher for ultimate evil that just wants this thing, that has this desire. And whereas the other two don't. Sean Connery really didn't. Where's the drive to make them fight
why
each other?
Why would Sean Connery train someone up?
Yeah, to ultimately fight him.
Yeah, chop his head off and things like that. And they establish, don't they, in the fighting montage, that Connor McLeod is ultimately a better swordsman than him because he teaches him to be. And what's the point? Just none of it makes sense. I also thought the first guy that they fight was really weird because he looks like 50. And he's a bit jowly, and then you see him do these backflips.
That's clearly not him.
Why did they hire a guy who looked like they could do backflips? I'm sure they're immortal. He's like learned how to do backflips and however long he's been alive. But it just clashed. It was just it was just.
And also, why are you doing so many backflips? Why? Like, you're in a fight.
It doesn't make any strategic sense.
No sense at all. Like, you're just wasting energy. It's like, look at me, and then you just get your head lopped off. I mean, what a load of tosh.
I'm not sure it makes that much sense in a fight to do backflips away from a guy's got a sword.
At no time. If you're a Shaolin monk, maybe you do one backflip to get out of the way, but it's flashy and it's for the camera, and you don't do 10.
Especially in New York
Subway.
Well, yeah, car park.
No, not car park.
What's on
underground car park.
Impaled by some needle, and then you're dying of something completely different, aren't you? Like it's been lying around on the floor, and this like skanky car park.
Yeah, exactly.
Some glass
some AIDS-ridden syringe.
Yeah. The central idea is really good, but there's no shoring up of the lore, and I'm quite happy. I mean, I recently watched, the horror movie Obsession. And the lore in there is pretty tight when it needs to be. And then there's room for mystery. But it feels like they thought about it and they thought, well, this is where the lore needs to be really, really tight to perpetuate the horror. And this is the point where you don't need to know who's pulling the strings and you just get little kind of hints. And there's none of that. You feel like they're just kind of making it up as they go along. And you're not sure like why they want the prize and what they get out of it. And then, if memory serves, it just gets more complicated because the commercial necessity to keep making sequels means that you've got to completely undo everything that you've established in the first movie, it's a kind of nonsense. I didn't mean that.
Nice, I like it.
It's a kind of nonsense.
That's the tagline.
It doesn't make sense. And then there's so many like little weird non sequiturs that are thrown in, like the Vietnam guy. He just seems like he's wandered in out of another movie. This guy just wandered around with machine guns, just looking to kind of I guess he's a vigilante, just looking to just machine gun guys. And just happens to sort of pick Clancy Brown. And then there's these kind of weird shifts into kind of comedy, where Clancy Brown kidnaps the old people and sort of drives like a maniac through New York. And and then you've got the law, haven't you, of like consecrated ground being places where you can meet and you can't fight. I actually quite like that, actually. I like the fact that there's a place where these guys can meet and just talk as immortals without the necessity to kind of lop each other's heads off. But then I don't know why you just wouldn't wait for the guy outside and cut his head off as he comes out of the church. It's just get on the sidewalk and lop his head off. So yeah, can we talk about the casting? Because it's kind of some pretty sort of juicy casting decisions, and can we start with the lead who's standing behind me, looking magnificent, I have to say. I have mixed feelings.
Looks like a Klingon.
I
behind you.
Mixed feelings about Christophe Lambert. What are your thoughts on Christophe Lambert?
I don't know that I have many thoughts. I really enjoyed Subway. He looked great in Subway. It was Luc Besson, wasn't it? So it was at that time where the new French new wave, or like the French 90s new wave, was coming out, and the aesthetic was, quite a lot of neon, but much cooler than any of the neon that was in American films. It just in general, I think European films, or French films at that time, had a little bit more weight to them. So even if it might not have made much sense, I honestly have not seen Subway since the mid-90s, and Subway came out. It was great, but I found out it came out in 85, so this is 86, so it's only a year before, and so Greystoke was before Highlander, is that right?
That was about 84, I think.
Wow, okay. Because I thought that Subway was the thing that brought him to recognition, that brought him to the West, but that's not the case, is it?
No, I think it was Greystoke.
Right. That's very interesting.
Which he's from. I haven't watched Greystoke in decades, but
I've never seen it.
I loved it. I remember seeing it like 3 times at the cinema. It was just like, I'd rather go and see something than not see something when I was a teenager. So I remember seeing Greystoke too many times, and kind of even sitting there thinking, oh, this is a bit boring. I've seen it like 3 times now, and still going to see it, and but he's great in it. He's terrific. I like him. I don't know how good he is, but there's just something kind of weird enough about him to kind of make me want to watch him. And I think it is a bit of a accent shit show, really, isn't it? It's like, and he's, you've got to believe from the research that he worked hard on trying to sound Scottish, but he doesn't. And someone else was talking about him, and I thought this when I was watching him. Someone says he actually sounds like Peter Lorre. You're just generally, but I kind of like some of his weird line deliveries. I think I sort of I wrote to you the line that I like, where I remember he goes, where you have these little kind of flashbacks to where he is in history, and you have him rescuing the little girl who ends up becoming his secretary. I want to talk about that relation. That's a weird relationship. I want to talk about that. And he kills this like member of the SS, doesn't he? And he goes, "Whatever you say, Jack, you're the master race." And he's got this really weird, like throaty voice. But I love that voice. I think he looks great. I think he's really good. He's had such a strange career. I was just looking at the things he crops up with, because you think about him, you just assume he had this good run of 3 kind of like big or cult movies, and then from then on it's just straight. It's almost like straight to video stuff. But he did a film with Michael Haneke and Isabel.
What was that?
I think, is it called The White? I can't remember. It's called The White something or other. And it wasn't that
long.
Oh
yeah.
I think he won an award for it. Yeah. He crops up briefly in a Coen Brothers movie, Hail Caesar. He's in that.
Yeah.
And he just seems like a really interesting, nice guy. And I love the fact that he's short-sighted, that he wears glasses in normal life, and he's virtually blind whenever he does any of these movies. It just makes him kind of quite vulnerable and human. Stuart Gordon, the Reanimator actor, really likes him as well. Yeah, he was the one that said he looked like Hugh Laurie. I was just reading his autobiography recently, so I like him, even though he's technically not very good in this, but he's kind of weird enough for me to kind of want to watch him. Anything else to say?
Claire Denis, White Material, not
That's
Michael
it,
Haneke.
Yeah.
Just in case people at us afterwards for.
Yeah, they will do. I know we watch.
They always do, mate.
We always watch
terrible,
like the people, the BFI iPlayer subscribers, and they
the Sight and Sound subscribers. Actually, Adam and Damian, you've got that wrong again.
Sorry.
Yes, I don't know about Christophe Lambert. Again, it's not somebody I've really thought about. Is he any good? Yeah, I don't know. Uh, seems to have like he looks good. He's tall. He's quite good looking. He's quite sort of like got that French sort of swarthiness to him. He has a bit of charisma. How much, I'm not sure, but enough to kind of carry, I suppose. Uh, yeah, I don't know. I don't really have anything to say about that. I don't
I'll
have
tell you. I've
any.
just remembered why I've got a soft spot for him because I had when I lived in London, a friend of mine, Simon, shout hello Simon. You don't listen to this, but hello Simon anyway. Um, he he had a real sort of gift for basically sort of ferreting out really interesting straight to video movies. And a couple of them had Christophe Lambert in, and I love them. There's a film called Mean Guns. I think it's an Albert Pion film. So can't remember Michael Haneke or Claire Denis, but I can remember Albert Pion, and that's got
Who I
Ice.
don't, I've never even heard of.
No, he's a straight to video legend. I mean, I suppose his most
Mean
famous films
Guns.
like the
Okay.
cyborg movies, like with
Right.
but he's dead now. He died a couple of years ago actually. But he did a film called Mean Guns with Ice-T and Christophe
Mm.
Lambert, which I really liked. And he did a Yakuza. No, he didn't direct it, but Christophe Lambert did a Yakuza film called The Hunted, which I think is terrific and has a Christophe Lambert doesn't feature in this sword fight. There's a phenomenal sword fight on a train.
Mm.
And I remember watching those, and I think these are really good. He's got good taste in low budget, straight to video action movies. So I like him, and he was married to Diane Lane for a while. So yeah, so but
Beautiful.
can we talk about Sean Connery?
Yeah, go for it, mate.
Well, I love Sean Connery in this. I think Sean Connery is terrific, and I think Sean Connery does what Sean Connery does, and only Sean Connery can do, in rock up in any period of history, um, playing any nationality and not changing his accent, and you utterly buy it because it's him, because he's a proper movie star, and he's probably one of the most regal and historical looking movie stars. We could drop him in any period of history and he kind of doesn't look out of place. And I think he's phenomenal in this, in the way that he was in the 80s. He was having that revival, wasn't he? That sort of post I suppose it came round about The Name of the Rose and The Untouchables, and then he's just, he'll often get sort of higher billing than the time that he's allotted deserves, but you just drop him into a movie like Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade, or the last 30 seconds of Robin Hood, Prince of Thieves, or I'm sure there are other examples, and he's fantastic, and he just gets by on the power of his Conneriness. Not to say that he's not a good actor. He's terrific. I mean, he couldn't pull that off if he wasn't a very, very skillful actor, and I loved him in that. I was also really surprised, unless they were using a double, there's a bit where he runs down the beach. He's almost keeping up with.
Mm.
How old is Connery? I've never been able to run that fast, and he's like sprinting down the feet. He's got the face of like a really handsome 70-year-old man, but he's just like pegging it down the beach. And I thought, my goodness, Sean Connery's fit in 1986.
He was basically our age, I think, like 55, 56 when he
Yeah,
did that.
I can't run down a beach.
Yeah,
You
no.
probably can. I can't do it.
Well, I mean,
I
I
actually
could do it for 10 seconds and
tried
then
to climb over a fence the other day. Admittedly, the fence was chicken wide up to the top, but it only came up to like my sort of, I don't know, like I suppose my sternum, and I couldn't get a foothold and I fell over it. It's like, I thought, when was the last time I tried to climb
Brilliant.
over a fence? And he's like running down a beach. Mind you, that's all he's paid to do is like do stuff.
yeah.
Like, isn't it?
Once you do running down the beach. Come on, let's go. 20 seconds and cut. Okay, good.
Yeah, but it's still a flat out sprint if my memory
Yeah, that's
serves.
true.
And
That's
they probably do
true.
it a couple more, and they asked him he's doing it in barefoot as well.
Probably did it all day though. Like it took him all day to do like 3 takes.
Yeah.
But no,
Well,
for
he's only
sure
there
he
for
was fit.
He's only there for 5 days, so they couldn't waste his
That's
time.
it.
apparently. That
That's it.
surprised me because it seemed to be, I'm slightly contradicting myself. There seems to be more Connery than 5 days shooting would have accommodated. It's been working flat
Mm.
out. And remember, in the middle of all of that, they had to shut things down where he almost walked off the set
Mm.
for nearly having his eye taken out by Clancy Brown. I suppose. Yeah, you said Clancy Brown was the best thing in the film, didn't you?
Mm.
I was really surprised at how much he annoyed me this time round.
Mm.
I felt he was a little bit too cartoonish.
He definitely
Yeah,
was. Definitely
yeah,
was.
yeah. Actually, I've got a quote here actually from the writer about just not about how the character. He doesn't personally criticize Clancy Brown, but he just talks about the his take on the Kurgan, the character. He says much more tortured. The Kurgan is Highlander. Oh no, the Kurgan in Highlander is pretty much like Freddy Krueger, just a cackling psychopath. I envisioned him as a guy who loses everything over time, and I
Which
think
would have
I think
been much more
yeah,
interesting.
yeah, and which makes sense that they would have cast like someone like Scott Glenn in that
Yeah.
role, a smaller guy,
Yeah.
more wiry guy who can fit in and looks good in a suit, but could also look perfectly creditable hacking your head off. So yeah,
Mm.
I wasn't, and I like Clancy Brown. I like him enormously, and
Yeah.
I always remembered him as being one of the best things in the film, and and I prefer his villain because his two iconic villains are that and the Warden in the Shawshank Redemption. And I think in the Shawshank Redemption, he's 10 times more frightening for being
Yeah.
quieter until he explodes into violence and things like that.
And also for being much more three-dimensional.
Yeah, which
Right.
that's the cards he's given. You know,
Mm.
um, I,
And young, like I mean,
oh
that
yeah,
was early Clancy Brown, right? I mean,
oh
how long would it have
yeah,
been?
I don't know, but just round about that time, I'll tell you what he's very good in. Have you seen Bad Boys with Sean Penn?
Yeah, a long time ago.
Phenomenal film. I just remembered it as being just like a bit of a sleazy sort of knockoff of Scum. Because it has some of the same beats, doesn't it? Even has the same method of dispatch where, Ray Winston puts a load of snooker balls in a sock cue and Sean Penn puts a load of like drink cans. As to why you would have a drink can with all these like metallic things you can turn into weapons in a young offenders institute baffles me. But yeah, he puts them
Yeah,
in a
yeah,
pillowcase,
yeah.
and I think it's Clancy Brown he takes out with it actually. But it's a really good film. I remember the Rewatchables podcast did an episode on it over lockdown, and I thought I'll give it another watch. And I was amazed at how how good it was. And
The
Clancy
Bad
Brown,
Boys, this is,
yeah,
yeah.
Bad Boys, yeah.
Bad Boys was his first film as well,
Clancy
1983.
Brown's, and he's really good in it.
Yeah.
He's very good.
Mm.
He's scary. He's stupid. He's like, I think he's like the guy that I think Issei Morales is like the real villain in it, but I think it's Issei Morales. But
Mm.
he's the guy that Sean Penn has to deal with in jail before Issei Morales joins him for the big proper showdown at the end. So he's the guy that runs the jail effectively, the kind of the thug. And you know that he's basically like the halfway guy that needs to be dispatched before the real showdown that the film's about. But he's very, very good in that.
I
Very,
will definitely rewatch Bad
yeah.
Boys. That's nice to. I've
Penn's
not seen it
great,
for
and
such a
it
long
was a
time.
much better film than I remembered it being. I saw it when I was like 14, and then saw it again during lockdown. But I suppose the only thing I'd sort of there's two more things I'd like to bring up, and then we can sort of wrap things up if you want to. I think the most interesting relationship in the film is the relationship between and I think the actress, and I can't remember her name, is really good in it as well. Is the relationship between him and his basically his secretary, who you find out is the girl that he rescued in World War II, and has sort
Mm.
of grown up with him remaining the same age as the keeper of his secrets.
Mm.
It's a very ambiguous relationship and arguably quite a disturbing one if you think about it too much.
For sure.
Yeah, because there's clearly a bit of a erotic charge between them, isn't there? But he's
Yeah.
effectively been her father, and then she's like outgrown him in terms of like aging, and he's remained the same. And she clearly, I would say, clearly fancies him. So,
Yes.
any thoughts on
Yeah.
that? I would have been interested in a sort of like darker movie that sort of explored that a little bit.
So Sheila Gish is the name of the actress.
Yeah, very good.
She was very good, and she was very interesting, and it would have been much more interesting to focus on that, I think, or just to give us a little bit more.
Yeah.
I think the film just suffers from that altogether. Anything that's interesting is just reduced to less than one dimension. And so consequently, all you're seeing is video killed the radio star for 90 minutes or so, with lots of images and a really tatty narrative thread. So yeah, very interesting, that part of it. But again, it's just, you're just getting a droplet of something. And so, yeah.
You watched Razorback. I
Yes.
had a look at Russell Mulcahy's filmography, and there are a few films in there that I had sort of quite fond memories of.
Like,
Ricochet. I just couldn't find
that's
anyone.
Ice-T as well, isn't it?
Yeah, yeah, Ice-T and John Lithgow and Denzel Washington. I haven't seen that, I think, since I was a
Since,
student.
yeah, same.
So it might be awful, but
Be
I
shit.
remember it. Remember really enjoying it. And I quite like Razorback, his previous movie.
Yeah,
What
I'd
did you
never
think
seen
of it?
Razorback
Yeah.
before. What I did like was the opening, the cinematography, which apparently was done by the guy who did Mad Max 2, was amazing. Like Australia, those reds, those incredibly shot. And you just think, wow, this is such a Australia has such an amazing vista, and with the different lights at various times of day, it looks incredible, and it looks so eerie. The deep reds look like you were in a kind of hell. Yeah, I think Razorback suffered from not knowing its tone. The two brothers were that whole idea of those two brothers was done much better in that 100 Bloody Acres. Did you see that with Damon
Yeah,
Harriman
yeah.
and
Yeah, and Angus
which is
Sampson. Yeah.
Angus Sampson? Yeah, brilliant film, really fun. Whereas I think what they did here was they tipped over too much into those Mad Maxian type of like weird characters that without any kind of substance. Yeah, and by the end of it, I just thought it was a bit sort of, I'm glad I've seen it, but it's ticked a box, but I'm not ever going to see that again.
Well, I think I watched it again. I'd seen it a couple of times before, and I remember when it came out, I was like, I didn't see it at the cinema, but I was like fascinated by it. So I don't know, I got a weird thing about like man-eating pigs as monsters. I quite like them, and I think that was like the first significant. Was it? There must have been some before that. The first significant man-eating boar film that
We should do an episode on that, mate, on the man-eating boar films, because they'll all be, for me, they'll all be just like, I'll be cursing all of them, I'm sure.
Well, there's a John Jarrett one called Boar that I think
Is there?
yeah, that was out a few years ago, which clearly is like they've got a lot of nods to Razorback. I liked it. I mean, there were a lot of kind of MTV elements in it, but I thought it kind of worked better in that world. I think it wasn't a good advert for Australia. It's like, because Australia looks like some hellish rubbish tip in
Yeah.
it. There's something which is deliberate, I think, because I think there's clearly kind of nod backs to Wake in Fright, I think.
I was going to say, yeah,
Wake in
yeah.
Fright with the man-eating pig, and
Yeah.
it throws a few like nice little sort of narrative surprises. I think there's some kind of, like I don't want to give anything away. There's some unexpected unexpected deaths, I think, and I think quite like the villains. I like Chris Hayward. He's like the older of the villains. I remember liking him a lot, just seeing him cropping up in stuff and he's in The Man from Snowy River, and he's in Gallipoli, and I think he turns up as a very old man in the Wolf Creek TV series as well. He's one of the first victims of Hunter Mick, and
Is he the driver, the boss?
no, he's not. He's the guy. He's a guy in a shop. I think he's just like
Right. Oh yeah,
yeah. I think Mick goes back and kills him or something. And if I might
just because he's
misremembered
Mick.
Yeah. And again, I really like Bill Kerr. He's like the Robert Shaw figure. Like the hunter.
Yes.
This
Yeah,
guy.
he was good. He
And
was
he is
good.
good. Yeah.
But there's moments where he's so over the top that Russell Mulcahy doesn't know how to. He doesn't know how. I think he doesn't know actors. He knows images, and he knows like images within like 3 to 5 seconds at a time. I think when you've got a director who doesn't know actors and just allows them to do, is not allowing them, is not telling them to come back a little bit, because I think Razorback could have been a really good film. And I think Razorback is a better film than Highlander.
Definitely.
But it does suffer from that fact that, well, I mean, if you cast great actors, then most of the time they're going to give you what you want. But, you know, as a director, you have to be able to just kind of reel them in and reel them out a little bit. And I just don't think he knows how to do, or he didn't know how to do that. I don't know if he does.
Yeah, and
anymore.
he doesn't really do that with Clancy Brown either, does he? Because
No,
I think
no.
the human villains in both films are like really nasty cartoon characters, aren't they?
Yeah.
They feel like they're animated characters in flesh.
Yeah,
It's like some
yeah.
crazy Animaniac, Ren and Stimpy style kind of murderers. I suppose the only thing left I've got to say is, obviously either later this year or next year we're having the remake of Highlander with Henry Cavill. Well, I've said it already, haven't I? Dave Bautista, Russell Crowe. I'm really looking forward to hearing what accent he comes out with. He's the accent king, and Karen Gillan, which I'm actually quite excited about. Directed by the man that made all 4 John Wick films. So, are you looking forward to that?
Somebody asked me a question. Are you looking forward to something? I don't really have. There's very few things that I actually look forward to. When they come, and we'll see. At the moment, no, I'm not looking forward to it. That's my honest answer. When it comes out, will I be interested? We'll see. We'll see how it. But yeah, no, I'm not. I can't wait for the new Highlander reboot.
I'm the opposite. Not. I'm one of those.
Yeah.
The moment I hear it's going into production,
yeah,
there's part of my brain that's just ticking down. And I'm really looking forward to it. I'll wait years for films.
The Buddhists talk about the wisdom of no expectation, you know, so I try and sort of adapt as much of that as possible.
That sounds too bleak to me. I think it's worth risking the disappointment for the
worth hyping yourself up for
expectations. I think it will be a better movie. I don't know. I remember there's a phrase in boxing: "First never follows." So I think it can probably never have, for better or worse, it can't have the impact, and it might on every level be technically better, but it might not have the impact of the first one. But the one thing I can pretty much guarantee is the fights will be a lot better, because the John Wick guys, they know how to keep it wide. Hire people who are really good at fighting, train them for about 9 years before the film starts, work out thing in previs beforehand, and so the fights will be good. And I think the cast is great, and I think all of the ingredients look like it would be good.
Yeah, the lore's going to be better, the script's going to be better. It's going to be a better film. So yeah, I'll definitely probably have a look at it. If it's, as you say, it's what's his name, Chad Stahelski.
Yes, that's the one.
Yeah, we like him.
We do like.
Okay, that's it.
I'm done with sword fights.
Good.
We does sword fights good. That's appalling English. But because you see. I suppose you see a possible element of it because the last John Wick film had a lot of sword fighting in it, especially in the Japan sequence. So we know that he can do sword fights as well as he can do gun fights and gun fu,
stick fights,
knife
any
fights.
Weapon fights,
Good at fights, isn't he? Car chase is pretty good at those as well.
Yeah. He's just umbrellaed action, mate. Anything action, he knows what he's doing.
I'll watch his fights. Yeah. Well, Highlander, done it.
Lowlander.
It can be only
Nolander. Yeah, it can be only done. I like that.
Be only done. I like Lowlander as well.
Well, we'll take some of those and put them into the bomb later. Amazing. I would. Yeah, let's finish and we'll carry on and we'll talk. And so, thanks to the viewers and listeners who listen to us. We really appreciate you. I wanted to say. Oh, anyway, yeah. have you got anything to plug? Like, do you want to plug your Fighting Nightingales or anything? I just thought,
Oh
like, why don't we do that?
Thank you. That's very nice. Yeah, I'm in a spoken word musical trio called the Fighting Nightingales.
Very good.
Gig in and thank you. We gig in and around the East Midlands at the moment, but maybe casting our nets further adrift. And if you want to find out what we're up to, we are on Instagram at All Things Fighting Nightingales, and if you're a little older, Facebook on the Fighting Nightingales. And that also includes information about this podcast, because this is included in All Things Fighting Nightingales and anything else we're up to, because I also do history comedy shows with my brother under the plume of Professor Edvard von Goosechaser. And we'll be down in Cornwall in August sometime at St. German's Priory. So this may come out.
Yeah, it will do for sure. I'm going to make sure.
So if you're in Cornwall, pop along. It might be pay what you feel. If not, it won't be too expensive, and see some history comedy. And pull me up on getting my French directors mixed up. But I know who Albert Payan is.
Yeah. So you get.
Do you have anything you want to plug?
I don't actually, mate. Be kind to each other. That's all I want to plug. Be kind to each other. Simple. When I do have something, I'll plug it away. But right now, I don't have anything. But that. All right. Well, until the next time. Nice one. Thanks, buddy.
Welcome.
See you later.
The mission has been completed.
Groovy.